I am sorry. I should have listened to you. I didn't know kindness could be punished like this. Then I listened quietly and then he lifted her chin. Mutoni, look at me. You did nothing wrong. You were tricked, not because you are stupid, but because you are kind. Don't worry. The truth always finds its way home. Leave the rest to me. I know what to do. Moni looked at him fearfully. Are you angry? He shook his head. No. Honesty has already solved half the problem. The truth will handle the rest. On Monday morning, Tendai left home earlier than usual, wearing his grey shirt and holding a small black fire. He greeted everyone in the compound politely, but his smile had a secret hidden behind it. And then by mid-morning, the peace in Glenview vanished. Mr. Dubet, Mudo's husband, suddenly came back home from work looking furious. He stormed through the gate shouting, Mudo, where are you? What nonsense is this I am hearing? Come out before I break this door. People rushed out to see what was happening. Mudo came out in her wrapper, still holding a spoon of porridge. Oh, what is it, my husband? Why are you shouting like police now? He pointed at her furiously. Don't my husband me. You and your group of foolish women tried to spoil that girl's marriage. You taught her to take money that was not hers. You called yourselves strong wives. You are only strong in stupidity. Mudo frowned slowly, still acting confused. Oh. What are you talking about, my husband? Mr. Dobbs' voice boomed. So, you are still acting innocent. Tai came to my office this morning and told me everything about your so-called wives' association. And how you people tricked his wife into stealing office money. You have turned this compound into a den of thieves, right? Gaps filled the compound. Memory dropped her broom. Toro, who was standing near the tap, froze like a thief caught in daylight. Mudo's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Oh. Tendai went to your office. Yes, Mr. Dobb roared. And the story has reached your friends' husbands too. They are all on their way here. Mudo's voice trembled. But we didn't mean harm. Shut up. He barked. Because of your foolish games. All of you will face embarrassment today. You will explain your nonsense publicly. And indeed, within 1 hour, the men started arriving one by one, looking angry and confused. Tari's husband shouted, Tariro, come out here. Is it for you borrowed money from another man's wife and denied it? And you even made her look like a liar. Have you no shame? Taro stammered. Oh, no, now it was not like that. I shut up, he snapped. You better go and return every cent. If not, you will sleep outside today. Memory tried to defend her friend. It was just a joke. Oh, but her husband glared at her. You call this grace a joke? Since you like association, you go and sleep there tonight. The whole compound turned into a full-blown drama series. Women cried. Men shouted. Children ran to hide behind water drums as their mother's secrets exploded like fireworks. And neighbors stood outside pretending to fetch water, but actually they were enjoying the show. However, Moni stayed inside quietly shaking. She could hear the chaos but said nothing. When Tendai returned that evening, she looked at him with guilt. It's my fault. Maybe I should have stayed silent. Tendai smiled and shook his head. No, my love. You did what was right. You told the truth, and the truth is not responsible for the noise that follows it. Outside, the compound was still vibrating with drama. Mudo's husband had locked her out, shouting, You think you are clever? Go and live with your strong wives' association. She banged the door helplessly, muttering all this because of that naive woman. This is all Tendai's fault. That man is so proud. He should have settled this privately. But her husband snapped back. Are you okay? You made his wife look like a liar in public. And now you expect silence. If she were my wife, I would have left this compound the very next day to keep her away from wolves like you. You and your useless clique have brought disgrace to every woman here. That night, while the rest of the compound lay in chaos, Mooney and Tendai sat under the small veranda sharing roasted maize. She looked at him and said quietly, "It's funny. I was the one everyone laughed at for being honest, and now I feel like honesty is the only thing that saved me." He smiled. "You see, my love, lies make noise, but truth sleeps peacefully." Mooney laughed, leaned her head on his shoulder, and said, "Maybe that is why the whole compound can't sleep tonight." Now the story of Madam Honesty and the Strong Wives Association traveled across Harare faster than combis in morning traffic. From the local market to the church, people talked about the quiet wife who had been mocked for her honesty, but Rose whose truth had scattered an entire gang of lying wives. Some said she was lucky while others said she was wise. And then on a Wednesday afternoon, something strange happened. A shiny black complaint car stopped in front of the compound. The door opened and a tall, serious-looking man in a suit holding a briefcase stepped out. He walked with purpose. His shoes were too clean for Glenview dust. Children ran to peek through the gates and someone guessed. Maybe the landlord sent a lawyer to evict the gossip. But when the man asked, "Is this where Mr. Tendai lives?" everyone froze. Itendi muttered from her veranda as she came out quickly. Yes, he stays in that last room." What is the matter?" The man smiled politely. "I am Mr. Chico, Managing Director of Zim Audit Consulting. I came to see him and his wife." Within seconds, the entire compound transformed. Memory started sweeping the verna as if cleanliness would erase her shame. Kamo shouted at her child, "Stop playing there. We don't need noise." Even Mudo, who had refused to greet Moni for days, quickly volunteered to help the visitor find the right door. She knocked sweetly. "Tendai, your big visitor is here." "Oh." Tendai stepped out looking surprised, followed by Mutoni, who looked nervous. "Good afternoon, sir," Tendai said respectfully. "Please come in." Mr. Cho smiled warmly. "No, I will speak here so everyone can hear." Now that caught everyone's attention. Heads popped out of every window. Children stopped playing and the wives came out sat quietly pretending to peel granite. But actually they were listening with both ears. The director cleared his throat and began. "Mr. Tendai, when you reported what happened, the company decided to look into the matter carefully because it is not every day that we find an employee's wife who chooses honesty over convenience. Your wife's actions protected the company's fund and that kind of integrity must be celebrated." He turned to Mutoni. "Madam, on behalf of Zim Audit Consulting, I want to thank you for your honesty. We are promoting your husband to finance manager and both of you will be moved to a complaining apartment in Endale. We need families like yours. Families that show what integrity means." The compound gasped collectively. Someone dropped a plate. Memory nearly fainted. Mutoni's eyes widened. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say much," the director said kindly. "Your life already said it." He shook her hand and handed her an envelope. Inside is a small gift from the company. For you, not for your husband. Use it as you wish. You deserve it. As the black car drove away, the compound lost control. People who once mocked her now dashing her blessings and even the children sang, "Madam Honesty, number one wife." Tendai looked at his wife proudly. "You see my love, the truth may walk slowly, but it never gets lost." Mio came closer and smiled awkwardly. Weeks passed, and Glenview slowly returned to its ordinary rhythm. The laughter, once filled with mockery, was now humbler, softer, cautious. The gossip that once echoed in the corridors had turned into whispered lessons about honesty and regret. Every woman, every husband, Every child in that compound had learned something that would stay with them forever. Sometimes, in the evenings, when the sun dipped low and the sky glowed orange, the neighbors would gather near the communal tap. They would talk about life, about work, and somehow, the story of Madame Honesty would always find its way back into the conversation. "Do you remember the day Mr. Chico came?" one would ask. "How could I forget?" another would reply. "I thought the ground would swallow me alive." They would laugh softly, not out of mockery now, but out of wisdom and through shame. Even the children, who had once sung teasing songs about Mutoni, had changed. They now sang new words, with admiration and pride. Madame Honesty, #1 wife. Tells the truth and saves her life. In Avondale, life had taken on a gentler rhythm. The air was quieter, the streets cleaner, and the nights more peaceful. Mutoni would often wake up early, draw the curtains wide, and breathe in the morning air with a heart full of gratitude. Tendai's promotion had not only changed their home but had also changed his confidence. He carried himself with quiet dignity, earning respect wherever he went. But despite their new surroundings, they never forgot where they came from or what the truth had cost them. One Saturday afternoon, while tending to her flowers, Mutoni heard a knock at the gate. When she opened it, she froze in surprise. Standing there was Mudo, dressed modestly, a small basket of mangoes in her hands. "Oh, Mudo," Mutoni said softly. "This is a surprise." Mudo smiled awkwardly. "I was in the area. I wanted to check on you. And maybe say thank you, again." Mutoni opened the gate wide. "Come in." They sat on the veranda, sipping juice. For a while, they said nothing. Then Mudo finally spoke. "You know, after you left, everything changed," she said. "Our husbands stopped trusting us. Even we stopped trusting each other. The association is gone. But sometimes, I think it was for the best." Mutoni nodded quietly. "Sometimes, things must break before they can be rebuilt properly." Mudo sighed. "I started a small business. Selling clothes in Mere Market. It's not much, but it's honest work. I remember your words every day, truth builds foundations that don't fall." Mutoni smiled warmly. "I'm happy for you. You see, honesty doesn't destroy people, it purifies them." Tears welled up in Mudo's eyes. "You taught me that, Mutoni. I only wish I'd learned it sooner." They hugged, two women once divided by deceit, now bound by redemption. Months turned into years. The story of Madame Honesty and the Strong Wives Association became a neighborhood legend. In schools, teachers would tell it to their pupils during moral lessons. In churches, pastors used it as a sermon about integrity and faith. Even at Tendai's office, new employees heard the tale as part of their orientation. Once, a worker's wife refused to lie. She lost her friends, faced shame, but saved her husband's name and the company's trust. Mutoni never sought fame, but it found her anyway. People began visiting her home, wives seeking advice, young couples asking for guidance. She always said the same thing, softly but firmly. Honesty doesn't guarantee an easy life, but it guarantees peace of heart. And peace is something no lie can buy. One evening, as the rain began to fall gently on the roof, Tendai closed his newspaper and looked at his wife. "You know, my love," he said, "if our story can change even one person's heart, then every tear we shed was worth it." Mutoni smiled. "It already has. Just look at Mudo. Look at how the compound changed. Look at us." Tendai reached over and took her hand. "You're right. The truth may walk slowly, but it never loses its way." Outside, the rain washed over the flowers she had planted, each drop glistening like tiny pearls under the moonlight. And somewhere in Glenview, the women who once mocked her now sat with their daughters, teaching them the same lesson she had lived to prove. Be kind. Be truthful. Even if they laugh, One day, they will clap. Years passed. Seasons changed. But the story of Madam Honesty never faded. It traveled through Glenview like a melody, passed from one generation to another. Mothers told it to their daughters. Husbands mentioned it when giving advice to their sons. Even the shopkeepers at the local market would whisper, "Do you know Mutonoways?" That woman taught all of Glenview what truth really means. Her name had become a symbol. A quiet reminder that integrity, though often lonely, always wins in the end. One afternoon, a young woman named Ruto knocked on Mutoni's gate. She was newly married, barely in her 20s, with eyes full of worry. "Excuse me, Ma," she said shyly, clutching her handbag. "Are you Madam Mutoni?" Mutoni smiled kindly. "Yes, my dear. Come in. What brings you here?" Ruto hesitated. "They told me you're the woman who stood for truth even when everyone laughed at you. I have a problem at work. They want me to hide a mistake my boss made. If I tell the truth, I could lose my job. If I lie, I keep it, but I won't sleep at night." Mutoni looked at her, remembering the fear she once felt, the same trembling choice between silence and honesty. "My daughter," she said gently, "truth will never cost you more than a lie will. Lies look cheap in the beginning, but they demand heavy payment later. If your job requires you to lie, it is not a blessing, it is a trap." Ruto's eyes welled up. "But I'm scared. What if they fire me?" "Then let them," Mutoni replied softly. "Because when one door closes for truth, 10 more open for grace." The young woman nodded slowly, courage blooming inside her heart. As she left, she turned back and said, "Thank you, Ma. I want to be like you one day." Mutoni smiled, watching her walk away. "Be like yourself," she whispered. "But never let fear silence your honesty." That night, as the lamps flickered softly, Tendai joined his wife on the balcony. He placed a warm cup of tea beside her and said, "You know, you've become more than just a wife or a story. You've become a teacher without a classroom." Mutoni laughed gently. "I only told the truth." "Yes," he replied, smiling. "And that is what makes you a legend." The crickets sang, the city lights shimmered, and a soft breeze carried the scent of rain and roasted maize through the air. The same maize they once shared on that long night of chaos. Mutoni closed her eyes, remembering everything, the shouting, the tears, the shame, and finally, the peace that came afterward. "Do you ever miss Glenview?" Tendai asked. "Sometimes," she admitted. "Not the noise or the gossip, but the memories. That place broke me before it built me. It taught me that honesty is not for the faint-hearted, it's for the brave." A few days later, a letter arrived from Glenview. It was written in uneven handwriting, with smudges of ink and fingerprints of flour. It was from Mudo. "Dear Mutoni, I hope you and Tendai are well. I wanted you to know that we now have a small women's group in the compound again. But this time, it's different. We call it the Wise Wives Fellowship. We meet every Saturday to pray, share, and help each other's families. We no longer gossip, we grow. We use your story as our first lesson every time a new woman joins. We remind them that no peace can grow in a heart that hides lies. Thank you, sister. You saved us, even when we didn't deserve it. Yours truly, Mudo." Mutoni read the letter quietly. A tear slipped down her cheek, not of sorrow, but of deep, thankful joy. She folded the letter neatly and placed it in her Bible. "See," she said softly to Tendai. "The truth doesn't only set you free, it sets others free too." Years later, Glenview had changed beyond recognition. Roads were smoother, houses brighter, and the women who once filled their afternoons with gossip now gathered under the same tree to share stories of growth and faith. Madam Mutoneways, now an old woman with silver hair and calm eyes, sat quietly on her veranda in Avondale, her hands folded in her lap, watching the world move gently past her. She often thought of the days when truth had felt like a punishment, when standing firm had meant standing alone, but now she saw it for what it truly was, a seed that had grown into a forest. The conference she attended years ago had become an annual tradition, and the Wise Wives Fellowship had turned into a registered community organization that helped young women start businesses, pay school fees, and learn leadership. Her name had become more than a memory, it was a lesson whispered in homes and churches alike. Mothers told their daughters, "Be like Madam Honesty, fearless, truthful, kind," and men used her name as a measure of trust. Even those who once mocked her came to understand that her silence had not been weakness but wisdom. Each letter she received from Glenview reminded her that the truth she once carried alone now lived in hundreds of hearts. And when she finally grew too old to write back, she would sit under the evening sun, smile softly, and whisper to herself, "The truth never dies, it only changes homes." The day she passed, the sky over Glenview was unusually calm, as if the wind itself paused to pay respect. Women from every corner of the township came dressed in white, carrying flowers and candles, their voices low and steady as they sang hymns of gratitude. Mudo, now grey and gentle, stood before the crowd and said through her tears, "She taught us that no peace is greater than the peace of a clear conscience." When they laid Mutoni to rest, a small plaque was placed on her grave with the words, "Here rests Madam Honesty, who proved that truth may walk slowly, but it never gets lost." Years after, a school would rise in her name, Mutoniwes Primary, its gates painted bright blue, its motto written in gold, "Integrity is freedom." And every morning, as children raised their voices in recitation, the sound carried through Glenview like a promise kept. It was said that on quiet afternoons, when the wind moved gently through the jacaranda trees, one could almost hear her voice, soft and calm, reminding them all that honesty is not a burden, it is a blessing, one that outlives even those who carry it. And so, life in Glenview continued, wrapped in the quiet wisdom that Madam Honesty had left behind. The compound that had once echoed with gossip now hummed with laughter and purpose. Women who had once gathered to tear others down now met every Sunday to discuss ways of lifting each other up, sharing recipes, planning savings groups, and praying together for peace in their homes. Mudo had become a counselor of sorts, the very woman who once led the Strong Wives Association, now teaching young brides about humility, respect, and the importance of truth. "I used to think strength meant shouting the loudest," she would say, her wrinkled face breaking into a soft smile, "but Mutoni taught me that real strength is being silent when lies try to tempt you." Memory, who had once laughed the loudest at Mutoni, now ran a small grocery shop near the bus stop. Every morning she swept her front step, humming a hymn that Mutoni loved. When customers tried to cheat her or ask for unfair favors, she would shake her head gently and say, "Madam Honesty would not like that." Even the men of the compound had changed. They no longer measured their wives by obedience or stubborn pride but by patience and truth. Tendai, now retired from Zim Audit Consulting, often spent his mornings sitting by the garden, reading the paper as his grandchildren played nearby. Sometimes he would pause, watching them chase each other through the flowers, and whisper, "Your grandmother built all this with one truth." His eldest son, a man of few words and quiet integrity, had followed in his footsteps, becoming an accountant at the same firm where Tendai had once worked. The director, long retired, still kept a framed photo of that day in Glenview when he had handed Mutoni her envelope of honor, calling it the day integrity won. As the years turned, the story of Madam Honesty spread beyond her, retold in schools, churches, and radio dramas. It became a tale mothers told their children before bed, a reminder that goodness might be mocked, but it never fails. Some said Mutoni's spirit still watched over the women of Glenview, ensuring peace remained their portion. And each year on her birthday, the community gathered at her graveside, placing fresh flowers and whispering prayers of gratitude. They sang softly, "Lies make noise, but truth sleeps peacefully," the words that had once come from her own gentle lips. As the sun dipped below the skyline, casting golden light over the rows of small homes, it seemed to bless the entire neighborhood, a final reminder that even in the most ordinary of places, the power of one honest heart could change everything. And as dusk settled over Glenview, a soft breeze swept through the streets, carrying with it the laughter of children and the scent of freshly cooked salsa. The world had moved on, but the legacy of Madame Honesty lived quietly in every corner of the community she had once called home. Her story was no longer just a tale, it was a compass, guiding hearts toward truth. The women who had once stumbled now walked with grace, their voices softer, their words kinder. The men spoke with humility, remembering that respect was built not on fear but on trust. In every home, a framed verse hung on the wall: truth may walk slowly, but it never gets lost. And each time a child asked what it meant, an elder would smile and say, it means that the truth might be mocked, it might be lonely, but it will always win in the end. On the horizon, as the evening light turned gold and the birds flew home, it felt as though Mutoni herself was smiling, content, at peace, and proud that her simple act of honesty had grown into a generation of light. The story of Madame Honesty was no longer just about one woman, it had become a mirror for all who believed that doing right, no matter how small, could change the world forever.